What if the most powerful words Queen Elizabeth ever spoke were never written down, only whispered to Princess Anne in private? And what if those words weren't meant for King Charles, but for Catherine? In a shocking revelation, Princess Anne has finally broken her silence, revealing the Queen's final message, one that changes everything. Not about titles, not about tradition, but about legacy. And the future Queen isn't who the world expected. Why did the Queen place her faith in Catherine? And why was King Charles left speechless? The truth is out, and it's shaking Buckingham Palace to its core. The night it all changed, Anne breaks her silence. It was supposed to be a quiet evening inside Buckingham Palace. Just a small family gathering. No press, no speeches, no photographers. Just blood and legacy seated at a long, polished table. But as the night stretched on and the air grew heavy with unspoken thoughts, Princess Anne stood up and changed everything. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't make a scene. She simply looked her brother in the eye and delivered the words that had lived in her heart since their mother's final days. Catherine was always different, Anne began, with calm precision. And Mother saw that. She believed Catherine wasn't just a royal by marriage. She was the future. The room fell into stunned silence. King Charles froze, his expression unreadable. William looked up sharply, his eyes searching his aunts for clarity. This wasn't a toast. This was a truth bomb, and it had just exploded over one of the most sacred spaces in the royal household. Anne didn't speak as someone venting frustration. She was relaying a final message from Queen Elizabeth II herself, a message not shared with Charles or William, but entrusted only to her daughter. In her last conversations, Queen Elizabeth had told Anne that the monarchy's survival wouldn't just depend on bloodlines or titles. It would require someone with strength, stillness, and real moral clarity. That someone, she believed, was Catherine. The words weren't written in a will. They weren't part of any official record. But they were real. And Princess Anne, who had built her entire reputation on loyalty and restraint, wouldn't have spoken unless the moment truly demanded it. Her voice didn't tremble, but her message did. It shook the very foundation of the monarchy. Because what she revealed wasn't just a compliment to Catherine. It was a challenge to tradition. A quiet, powerful warning that things had to change, or they would fall apart. As the shock settled in the room like dust, one thing became clear. Anne's words weren't just a memory. They were a call to action. But where did they come from? And why did the Queen choose to keep such powerful thoughts a secret from the public, even from her own heir? The answers would lead us back to the Queen's final days, and the one conversation that changed everything. The Queen's hidden truth about Catherine. Queen Elizabeth II was known for keeping her opinions close to the chest. But in her final days, behind closed doors and out of the reach of public ceremony, she allowed herself one personal moment of honesty with her daughter. Princess Anne was the only one she spoke to in that way, not because she distrusted the others, but because she knew Anne would understand exactly what to do with the truth. According to Anne, the Queen quietly revealed something deeply personal. She had come to believe that Catherine, the Princess of Wales, wasn't just the supportive wife of the heir. She was something far more crucial, an anchor for the future of the monarchy. She holds herself with the kind of strength we rarely see, the Queen had said. There is calm in her. There is duty. And most importantly, there is silence where others would seek glory. It wasn't about blood or the crown. It wasn't about political maneuvering or public image. It was about character. Queen Elizabeth had ruled for 70 years. She had seen the monarchy rise, falter, and rebuild. And in Catherine, she saw a rare blend of dignity and resilience that she believed could help the crown survive whatever came next. She told Anne this not to create controversy, but to pass down a kind of torch, not of power, but of trust. Anne didn't act on that message right away. She kept it in her heart, knowing the timing would matter more than the content. But when public pressure on Catherine began to grow, when the headlines started questioning her absence, her role, her purpose, Anne knew the Queen's words couldn't stay buried any longer. The people needed to know what their monarch had seen, and Catherine needed to be reminded of what she was chosen for, not by blood, but by belief. But why speak now? Why not share this prophecy when the Queen passed or at the coronation? Anne isn't someone who acts on impulse. Her timing is always intentional. So what changed? Why did she finally decide to bring the Queen's secret into the light? The answer isn't just political, it's personal. It's about loyalty, legacy, and the shifting tides within the palace that demanded the truth be revealed. Why now? Princess Anne has always been the monarchy's quiet soldier, disciplined, relentless, and deeply strategic. She doesn't stir drama, she endures it. So when she chose to reveal the Queen's words about Catherine, people inside the palace didn't ask if she was telling the truth. They asked why she chose this moment to speak, because Anne's timing always means something. And this time, it spoke volumes. In the past year, Catherine has faced growing criticism. The press scrutinized her every move, asking why she wasn't attending more events, why she seemed to be stepping back, and whether she was still fit to be the future queen. The narrative was shifting, and not in her favor. And Anne, watching quietly, knew the Queen would never have stood for it. She had to step in. She had to protect the Queen's chosen pillar before public pressure chipped her down. But there's another layer. Behind the palace walls, shifts were already happening. New staff, new strategies, and new power players were subtly repositioning the public face of the monarchy. Catherine's name wasn't being erased, but it was being softened. Anne saw the signs, and she knew that if her mother's private prophecy wasn't spoken now, it might never be spoken at all. Worse, it could be forgotten. So she acted, not with press conferences or scandal, just with words, just with the truth. Mother said it plainly, Anne reportedly told Charles. The crown will need Catherine more than it knows. That sentence wasn't just a memory. It was a line in the sand. A message to the family and to the world that the Queen's vision wasn't buried with her. It's alive. And Anne would make sure it's heard. With Anne's message now echoing through royal corridors, all eyes turned toward Catherine. She hadn't asked for this spotlight. She hadn't made a move. But now, she stood at the center of the Queen's final wish. So who exactly is the woman Queen Elizabeth quietly trusted with the monarchy's future? And why is her quiet power proving more important than any royal speech or crown? Not just a consort, but a quiet leader. Catherine Middleton's rise wasn't forged in press conferences or palace corridors. It began in the quiet corners of public life, where she showed up not with headlines, but with heart. Queen Elizabeth didn't see Catherine as just William's wife. She saw her as someone who led without asking to lead. And that, in the Queen's eyes, was rare. What made Catherine different wasn't her title. It was her tone. Where others sought the spotlight, she chose service. Whether visiting hospice centers or advocating for mental health, she never demanded attention. She earned it. She has a way of listening that makes people feel seen, one palace aide said. That's more powerful than any speech. In a monarchy known for tradition, Catherine represented something new, leadership without ego. What struck Queen Elizabeth most was Catherine's resilience. The crown isn't easy to wear. It tests every part of a person: grace, patience, loyalty. Catherine had endured public doubt, relentless comparison to Diana, and the pressures of royal motherhood. And yet, she never broke. Her strength is in her silence, Anne once told a friend. It's in what she doesn't say when the cameras are on. But Catherine's greatest gift? Her ability to evolve without changing who she is. She became a symbol of the modern monarchy, not by rewriting the role, but by redefining what it means to be royal in a world that's watching every move. She carries tradition in one hand and progress in the other. And Queen Elizabeth saw that before anyone else did. As Catherine's quiet strength began shaping the future from behind the scenes, others questioned her visibility. Why wasn't she out front more often? Why weren't her numbers higher compared to others like Princess Anne? The headlines were harsh and the assumptions were easy. But behind those headlines was a choice, a deliberate, powerful choice to prioritize something deeper than public appearances. And that choice would tell us even more about Catherine's true role. The Crown's expectations versus Catherine's reality. In 2023, royal watchers were quick to note a startling stat. Princess Anne completed over 450 engagements. Catherine? Just 128. To some, it looked like imbalance. Was the future queen slacking off? Critics flooded social media and tabloids with accusations, but behind the numbers was a truth that only those inside the palace truly understood. Catherine wasn't skipping duty. She was building legacy, at home. At the heart of Kensington Palace, she was raising George, Charlotte, and Louis, not just as children, but as future figures of the crown. And Queen Elizabeth, who believed in legacy more than image, admired that. She's not retreating from duty, Anne explained to one advisor. She's investing in the next generation. While Anne was attending functions and ceremonies, Catherine was attending school plays, guiding homework, helping Prince George prepare for his exams. It was a kind of royal service no court circular could measure. But it mattered, because what Catherine was building wasn't for headlines, it was for history. Even Anne, famously no-nonsense and fiercely committed to her schedule, defended Catherine publicly. In a rare joint appearance, Anne said, "Raising a monarch takes more than a title. It takes presence. She's doing it right." That moment, quiet, unforced, marked a turning point. It reminded the public that royal service isn't always about visibility. Sometimes, it's about showing up where no one sees you. While many couldn't see the value in Catherine's low-profile approach, one person did: Anne. Their relationship, once simply cordial, had grown into something deeper. Anne had watched Catherine endure, adapt, and prioritize without complaint. And what started as mutual respect had become something stronger, an alliance. But how did two women from such different royal eras become unlikely allies in shaping the monarchy's future? The answer lies in what they saw in each other. Anne and Catherine. It began with quiet moments, shared glances at public events, behind-the-scenes conversations between engagements. Princess Anne and Catherine didn't click overnight. But over time, a bond formed, not out of royal obligation, but out of shared values: duty, discipline, and dignity. And it didn't take long for Anne to see in Catherine the same strength she had built her own reputation on. Anne, who had been dubbed the hardest-working royal, didn't impress easily. But Catherine wasn't trying to impress. She was just doing the work, consistently, quietly. That caught Anne's eye. She doesn't complain, she doesn't perform, she just delivers, Anne told a senior courtier. And in the royal world, that kind of devotion speaks volumes. The two women started collaborating more closely on causes like early childhood development and global education. While their public interactions were minimal, insiders noted that Anne often passed down strategic advice to Catherine, not in the form of long lectures, but in short, impactful wisdom. Don't waste time chasing favor. Do the work, and the respect will come. Their alliance grew stronger as public pressure intensified. When Catherine was targeted by headlines for doing too little, Anne pushed back privately and publicly. She saw the truth behind the camera flashes. And more importantly, she saw Catherine's role evolving, not just as William's partner, but as a woman capable of carrying the monarchy in her own right. What they built wasn't a friendship born of coffee dates or public statements. It was a kinship forged in service. Two women upholding the monarchy from different corners of the same castle, passing the torch not through speeches, but through action. As Anne and Catherine's alliance quietly reshaped the palace power dynamics, it became clear that the Queen's final words weren't just about praise. They were a prediction. But with every step forward Catherine took, a new kind of challenge emerged. This wasn't the same world Anne had served in. Catherine wasn't just facing tradition. She was facing a digital storm, and the rules of survival were completely different. Catherine versus the digital storm princess. Anne built her royal legacy in an era of newspapers and nightly news. She could make mistakes quietly, recover without the world watching. Catherine, however, stepped into a different battlefield, one where every blink is screenshot, every gesture overanalyzed, and silence is often interpreted as scandal. In today's digital age, Catherine is under a level of pressure no previous royal consort has ever faced. Every missed engagement sparks tabloid speculation. Every outfit comparison reignites the Diana debate. And every moment of privacy is treated like a national mystery. She's damned if she does, and damned if she doesn't, one palace aide admitted. But she never breaks. What the public rarely sees is how Catherine endures this scrutiny. She doesn't fire back. She doesn't release angry statements or fuel drama. Instead, she remains composed, choosing stillness over spectacle. This restraint isn't weakness, it's strategy. A quiet, dignified form of strength passed down from Queen Elizabeth herself. Even Anne, known for her blunt honesty, acknowledged the difficulty of navigating royal life in the internet age. In one interview, she said, "It was easier in my day. Mistakes could fade. Now, they're immortalized." That wasn't just a nostalgic comment. It was empathy. A recognition that Catherine isn't just living under pressure. She's surviving a 24/7 microscope. Despite the constant glare of cameras and criticism, Catherine never shifts the spotlight to herself. But one moment of absence in 2023 stirred more headlines than all her public appearances combined. When she skipped a major royal event, speculation exploded. Yet, the reason she stayed behind revealed everything about who she is, and why Queen Elizabeth saw her not just as a royal, but as a mother fit to raise a kingdom. The Earthshot absence. In late 2023, when the Earthshot Prize ceremony, Prince William's flagship environmental project, took place without Catherine, the headlines lit up with one question. Where is Kate? Rumors flew. Was she unwell? Was there tension? Was she stepping back? But when Catherine finally spoke, her answer was simple. I've been helping George with his exams. That quiet reply silenced the frenzy. No drama, no scandal, just motherhood. Catherine chose her son's education over the spotlight, and in doing so, she redefined what royal duty looks like in the modern age. She put her child first, said a former royal press secretary, and that decision echoed louder than any speech. This wasn't a one-off. Insiders confirm Catherine is deeply involved in her children's lives, not just as a figurehead, but as a hands-on parent. From school runs to homework help, she is preparing her children for a future far more complex than crowns and carriages. She's not raising heirs, Anne reportedly said. She's raising leaders. Even Princess Anne defended the absence, stating, "Not every duty is public. Some happen behind closed doors, and they matter just as much." That validation from the monarchy's most devoted servant reminded the world that service isn't measured by cameras, it's measured by commitment. And Catherine's commitment to her family is part of what makes her indispensable to the monarchy's future. While critics fixated on appearances, they missed the quiet transformation happening inside the palace. Catherine wasn't stepping back. She was stepping deeper into purpose. And behind the scenes, someone was watching that transformation unfold with pride and quiet guidance. Because what Catherine was building didn't just reflect her strength, it mirrored someone else's legacy. And it was in that silent mentorship that Catherine truly found her voice and her vision. The silent mentorship, Anne's influence on Catherine. The relationship between Princess Anne and Catherine is rarely captured in public. There are no grand photo ops or dramatic headlines. But within the walls of the palace, it has become one of the firmest alliances in royal history. A mentorship built not on formality, but on shared resilience. Anne saw herself in Catherine long before anyone else did. Both women embraced their roles not with flash, but with function. They didn't ask for applause. They asked for impact. And slowly, Catherine began to absorb Anne's methods, not just in royal engagements, but in mindset. She taught me not to chase approval, Catherine once told a friend, only to keep showing up. Anne never delivered long lectures. Instead, she led by example. Whether it was briefing Catherine on protocol or advising on how to handle aggressive press coverage, Anne was always direct, practical, and unwavering. She taught Catherine to pick her battles, guard her privacy, and remember that silence often says more than speeches. The impact became clear in how Catherine approached her causes. Early childhood development, mental health advocacy, these weren't just royal boxes to tick. They became lifelong missions. Like Anne's humanitarian work, Catherine's involvement was hands-on, detailed, and deeply personal. Together, they weren't just fulfilling roles, they were re-engineering what royal women could represent. And in that quiet partnership, something unexpected happened. Anne, often called the monarchy's toughest figure, found in Catherine not just a mentee, but an equal, someone capable of carrying forward a vision not yet fulfilled, someone who, in time, might carry the monarchy itself. With Anne's torch passed and Catherine's purpose clearer than ever, one truth began to emerge. Queen Elizabeth's final message wasn't just about the woman Catherine is now. It was about the queen she might one day become. But could she truly survive the pressures of a monarchy in transition? And what happens when personal values clash with centuries of tradition? The next chapter would reveal just how much weight Catherine is truly prepared to carry. Carrying the crown's weight in private. While the world sees tiaras, titles, and polished smiles, behind palace doors, Catherine carries a different kind of crown. One made of emotional labor, family pressure, and national expectations. She may not sit on the throne yet, but in many ways, she already lives like a queen. And it's not the kind of power you show off. It's the kind you shoulder. It starts at home. From school uniforms to future decisions that will shape Prince George's destiny, Catherine is hands-on in shaping the next generation. Every bedtime story, every parent-teacher meeting, every private moment is part of a larger mission. A palace aide once said, "She's not just raising her children, she's preparing them for history." Catherine also manages the emotional bridge between tradition and transition. William looks to her for grounding, the children rely on her for comfort, and even the public watches her for cues on how the modern monarchy should behave. She never asked for this weight, but she bears it with quiet grace. "She's the calm in the storm," said a senior royal source. Even the Queen saw that. And this wasn't lost on Queen Elizabeth. In her final days, as Anne would later reveal, the Queen wasn't looking to titles or bloodlines to measure strength. She was watching who remained steady when things got hard. And in Catherine, she saw a woman who, without ever saying it, was already doing the job. But behind every moment of grace lies sacrifice. And while Catherine continues to walk the tightrope between private devotion and public duty, the pressure doesn't stop. Every decision she makes is scrutinized. Every silence is interpreted. And yet, even in the face of unrelenting public commentary, she never reacts with drama, only resolve. But one absence in particular revealed just how misunderstood her role still is, and how deeply personal her decisions have become. The mother who chose her son over the spotlight. When Catherine missed the Earthshot Awards, an event that William had been promoting for months, the press erupted. Where was she? Was she ill? Was there a scandal? Speculation flooded tabloids within hours. But when the real reason came out, it shocked everyone for how simple and powerful it was. Catherine had stayed home because Prince George had exams. That's it. No drama, no hidden agenda, just a mother making a choice. And in that one decision, Catherine said more about her values than a dozen public speeches could have. "I've been helping George," she later said during a quiet appearance. No PR spin, no apology, just truth. Critics were quick to call it a dereliction of duty. But those who understood the monarchy's future saw something else. A woman shaping the next generation with intention and care. "Raising a future king takes more than state dinners," Anne commented privately. "It takes showing up when it matters." Once again, Anne had Catherine's back, not out of obligation, but out of respect. This moment also exposed how far the public still has to go in understanding modern royalty. Duty isn't always about being seen. Sometimes it's about doing the right thing even when no one's watching. And Catherine, despite the criticism, never wavered. She showed the world that the future of the crown starts in the living room, not just in the ballroom. And that's where Catherine's legacy is being quietly carved, in the everyday. Not with press releases or royal fanfare, but in decisions like staying home for her son, protecting family time, and choosing love over optics. But Catherine's quiet revolution wouldn't have been possible without someone passing her the torch. And as history has shown us, that person wasn't a king or a court. It was a princess with a mission, Princess Anne. The passing of the torch, Anne to Catherine. Princess Anne never made a public speech declaring Catherine her successor in spirit. She didn't have to. Her actions over the last few years spoke volumes. Through shared engagements, quiet encouragement, and unwavering support, Anne made it clear. She saw in Catherine a kindred spirit, someone capable, someone prepared. It started with mentorship. Anne offered guidance on how to avoid palace pitfalls, how to protect privacy, and how to pick the battles that matter. But it quickly grew into more. They became aligned, not just in duty, but in belief. Both women understood that true leadership isn't loud. It's consistent. Anne had spent her entire life carrying the institution on her back without ever asking for applause. And in Catherine, she found someone who wasn't trying to take the spotlight either. She saw a woman who, like her, measured success in legacy, not in likes. "She's solid," Anne once told a trusted aide. "She'll last longer than the noise." This quiet passing of the torch also came with responsibility. Anne wasn't stepping aside, but she was preparing Catherine to carry the emotional center of the monarchy when the time came. And with Queen Elizabeth gone, that time is closer than ever. What Anne began with discipline, Catherine continues with compassion. Together, they represent two sides of royal strength, tradition and transition. With Anne's torch in hand and Queen Elizabeth's words echoing in her memory, Catherine's place in royal history is no longer a question. It's a certainty. But what happens when the world finally realizes that the Queen's final message wasn't about William, but about Catherine? What happens when the quietest royal becomes the most essential? In this final chapter, we unpack the prophecy that left even King Charles stunned and shifted the future forever. The Queen's final message. Catherine is the future. It wasn't written in a will. It wasn't delivered in front of cameras. But according to Princess Anne, Queen Elizabeth's final message about the monarchy's future wasn't about Charles or even William. It was about Catherine. In those final fragile days, the Queen told Anne what she had seen unfold for years. She's the one who'll carry us forward. It wasn't a slight against her sons. It was an acknowledgement of leadership beyond lineage. Elizabeth had watched Catherine endure relentless scrutiny, maintain her dignity, and raise the future of the monarchy with quiet strength. She had seen Catherine rise not just through birthright, but through earned trust. And in that, she saw hope. Anne never forgot those words. She carried them until the right moment, until it was time to remind the family and the world that legacy isn't only about blood. It's about character. Mother saw something in her, Anne told a confidant. Not everyone did, but she did. And now, with the Queen's prophecy out in the open, the royal family can no longer pretend Catherine's role is ornamental. She is not just the Duchess of Cambridge, not just the Princess of Wales. She is the future's foundation. Whether the crown ever officially sits on her head or not, she's already carrying it every single day. As the monarchy faces its most uncertain chapter, one thing has become clear. Queen Elizabeth didn't just leave behind a crown. She left behind a prophecy, a quiet but powerful conviction that Catherine, not by blood but by strength, would one day carry the soul of the monarchy. Princess Anne delivered the message. King Charles stood in silence. And now the world knows. The future of the crown isn't just about succession, it's about stability. And Catherine, with her silent grace, may be the last hope of the House of Windsor. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more royal revelations. We're just getting started.